It is the Everton Byline, episode 43. We are back. Sorry, it's a little bit later than usual. Paddy and myself were plotting our way back from different parts of the country yesterday, but hope this finds you not too late, much later than it will do usually on a Tuesday afternoon. Paddy, how are you doing?
Yeah, well, great way for Everton to end the season on Sunday. Unexpected, to be honest, given where Newcastle were heading into the game and the fact that it didn't really mean anything to Everton in terms of kind of league position and everything else. But yeah, kind of up there in the great atmosphere, to be fair, up there at St. James's Park, and then Everton for a while looked like they're going to be party poopers on the day. Sure, Jordan Pickford was kind of reveling in it all. Just came away at the end feeling like pretty heartened about the kind of the overall trajectory and momentum right now. I mean, a lot of positivity around that, and it's really nice after 4 or 5 years of doom and gloom.
Yeah, like I think back to one of the things I was going to mention is we obviously made it through a season doing these podcasts. I mean, the first one we did was before the obviously Roma pre-season game. I think I'm right in saying it was either before or after it, and the mood around the club at that point was very different, wasn't it? Because like that was the game that was supposed to be the game, which was like the bringing together of the Freakins and Everton and this sort of new empire. And obviously that's fallen through at the time, and we were sort of scratching around about where the club was going to go. Obviously, the last season at Goodison, then we lost to Brighton 3-0 the week after, and it all felt quite bleak. So to be sat here at the end of the season with ownership situation resolved, feeling good about the team, feeling good about the manager, it's been a massive transformation from Byline episode 1. So just before we get into talking about the events of the weekend, just a reminder, as ever, we are sponsored by the Bridewell. You can see their logo in the top right-hand corner. If you're watching us on YouTube, if you are watching us on YouTube, do hit subscribe. We are going to be bringing you these shows through the summer, and as we're going to get on to talking about, there's going to be a lot of transfer business, a lot of comings and goings at Everton. So I'm sure we'll have plenty to talk about as the weeks go on. So do hit subscribe. Do leave us a comment as well on anything that we're talking about today. And the same goes you listen to us on Apple, iTunes, Spotify, whatever. Do leave us a rating. Do leave us a review. 5-star rating, if preferable as well. Especially after Everton won 3 games in a row to finish the season. Come on, get those 5-star ratings in. We're on 4.9 as a rating, Paddy, on Spotify. So I want to tip that up towards 5. So if you can give us a 5-star rating on Spotify in particular, that would be great. I take a lot of pride in that. Like people take great pride in the Ruber ratings and stuff.
Yeah.
So I want to push
my Uber rating for some reason. I don't know why.
Yeah, mine's 4.91. I think last time I checked. So I've had a few on that, but I mean, I've seen some very low Uber ratings from the Blue Room contingent. Yeah, I'm not going to name names on that. Yeah, but and as ever, if you want to email us, it's evertonbyline@gmail.com. About anything we're talking about today, about the summer, about Chicago, about New York, Atlanta, all those things. Do get in touch with us as we go into, I suppose, the great unknown in a lot of respects going into the next few weeks. But let's talk about Saturday first, Paddy. Sorry, Sunday, wasn't it? Even at St. James's Park. Just one of those. I think after last week, the emotion of it all, the win, and it kind of felt like Everton's end to the season, didn't it? Really, I was kind of expecting us to go there and do all right. You know, not necessarily go through the motions, but put up a fight, but ultimately end up losing to a Newcastle side that had virtually everything to play for. And I think Moyes said in his press conference afterwards, didn't he, that he was a wee bit worried about the levels of training going into the game. Felt like it dropped off a little bit. And even during the game, I don't know about you, it was one of those, like, I think we've had these so many times down the years where you watch us in an away game against a big side and you think, we're doing all right here. But like in the back of your mind, you're just thinking, when's the onslaught going to come? When's that desperation of the other team to win going to take over? Like, I think that's quite hard to quantify at times, isn't it? In terms of like just one team being more desperate to get the result than the other. But I think it does play a factor at this point in the season. But I don't know about you, but it never felt like it never came, really. It felt like Everton managed it really well. There were obviously flurries of Newcastle pressure, but nothing that ever felt like a real onslaught. And listen, it doesn't mean anything for us in the grand scheme of things. It is 13th still, after all. But just immense credit to the players and the managers to go there in those circumstances and be able to put in a performance like that. That wasn't a smash and grab. It wasn't a game where, think back to like Brighton when Moyes first came in. It was a lot more like the Nottingham Forest game where Everton were not dominant by any means, but thoroughly deserving of the win. And I think that this win and the performance against Forest in particular are probably showing the evolution of this team under Moyes in the short space of time he's been here, and the way in which they've been able to not just get results in these games, but put their own mark on these games as well as win them.
Yeah, so not just kind of bedding in deep and then looking to hit on the counter every now and then. At times they were, I would suggest, kind of controlling elements of the game. I loved the goal, obviously, but I loved the goal in terms of how much of a throwback it was for kind of a David Moyes' Everton team, in the sense that you've got a rampaging left back who puts a great ball into the box, and then there's your number 10 who's made a late run in to get on the end of it. It's a great header. It's a really, really good header, and reminiscent, I'm sure, for most people of Tim Cahill. And they combined in the first half for a similar one, with Pope having to make a really smart save in the end, and an acrobatic save. So fair play to Mykolenko for that. He's obviously been pushed further forward in this system, this kind of, I suppose, asymmetrical system at times. Been pushed further forward, and I have wondered often whether he's got the quality of delivery to really be the kind of the main man for Everton there moving forwards. There's two excellent deliveries on Sunday, and Charlie Alcaraz obviously showed maybe a different side to his game. We haven't seen much of that kind of headed prowess, aerial prowess, since he arrived. I mean, he was one of probably two or three almost still playing for the futures, and probably at least two of them, I would suggest, made a really strong case, didn't they? Just off the basis of that one performance. I mean, Alcaraz was excellent. Michael Keane was good. I thought at centre back with Jake O'Brien, who was also excellent. And then you had Jack Harrison on the wing, who I don't think had the same impact by any stretch, but I mean, I think he was put on to do a very specific role and to help out Ashley Young, and kind of consummate professionalism in this Everton squad, where so many of them are out of contract or know they will be leaving, and yet the performances were in the main. I don't think you could really fault anybody too much for what they did. So yeah, I thought they deserved it. Jordan Pickford again, to me, showed that he's really matured. He's really come on. I remember not so long ago we'd go to the St James Park, I almost said Stadium of Light there.
We'll be going there next season. Yeah. I'm sure he was delighted to tell you afterwards.
Yeah, he was. So yeah, I remember not long ago going to the St James's Park, and he would almost let the atmosphere get the better of him. He'd engage in a back and forth so much that I felt it detracted from his performance and impacted his performance. And there's none of that here. He looks so much more kind of comfortable in his own skin. Commanded his box and made a number of really important saves in the game. So I mean, he was my man of the match, as he probably would have been for most people. Just like I say, uplifting that there was so many positive stories on the day after I'd gone in slightly fearful for what was to come.
Just on Pickford, because like I know you spoke to him afterwards, but like obviously we spoke about him loads, and like, we did a show not long ago saying is he Everton's most important player of the Premier League era, and like we sort of settled that he could be with that in mind, which I think is a huge testament to him. But I think the thing that I was thinking about yesterday, and you sort of touched upon it there, is that one of my big fears around him a few years ago was that games where the emotions would really kick in, and you've talking Newcastle there and Liverpool, are the ones where going into them you used to wince and think, what's he going to do today? How's he going to handle this occasion? Is it all going to get the better of him? Whereas now, if you look at it, I think in the last few years, probably his best games for Everton have been against Newcastle and against Liverpool. Yeah. And like when you think about the situation he was in, like after the Origi moment and after that 3-2 meltdown game where you mentioned, where like he saved the penalty, didn't he? But he still lost the plot for a couple of goals, and Newcastle came back and won 3-2. When you think about where he was then, and like the immaturity at times and the way in which the passion and that hot-headedness got the better of him. To be in a situation now where like he's sort of flipped that to, there's still the odd little moment in there, isn't there, where you think about last season against Newcastle where he's giving it loads to their fans when we were 3-0 up. I think there was obviously a bit of back and forth with the crowd in the game of St James's Park last year where we drew. Obviously, there would have been a little bit at the weekend as well, but it feels like he's channeling that sort of that emotion in the right way now, where in the past it was like all-encompassing and overtook him. I mean, is that something that he spoke about afterwards, in the sense that, again, even the weekend, it would have been so easy for him, wouldn't it? After watching Sunderland get promoted, knowing there was nothing on the game for Everton, to sort of walk out there and just like give it loads all game, get involved in a tussle with the supporters. But like, he obviously had the armband on a Saturday and he was captain. He won the toss as well and switched it around. So we attacked the Gallowgate end in so they attacked the Gallowgate end in the first half, which is obviously the equivalent of like Everton's attacking the Glastonbury's in the first half. Like all those little bits are like, it's like being a shithouse and getting under the skin, but in like a much more subtle, mature way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think that's it. I think it's a maturity thing. You look at where he was in some of those moments with the Van Dijk tackle and the meltdown at St James's for that 3-2 game to where he is now, and big difference in his age, how he kind of handles himself as a keeper, and he's even kind of very basic points to make, like he's got kids now, so he's got to behave in a different way and show that extra maturity. I mean, I asked him afterwards like how he deals with the game. I said, like, being honest, you get loads of stick when you come here as a Sunderland lad. So how do you deal with that? And he said, I've got to prepare for it as though it's any other game, and I've got to treat it as though it's any other game. And I'm sure when he sets foot on the pitch, the adrenaline's coursing and he's wanting to give his very best. But I've always kind of felt in like high pressured situations, that's when he's often stood up for Everton. And he's spoken a lot, certainly when we've talked to him recently, about kind of setting standards repeatedly, day in, day out in training, and how important it is. Like, even after the game, and we were talking about Everton positive end to the season, he's saying like the challenge next season is to just keep doing it, keep the standards where they are now, keep doing it day in, day out. And he said that the manager will be the one that's on top of that and maintaining that. But what he doesn't want, Pickford, and what Moyes doesn't want is a situation where, I think he said, like, and I'm paraphrasing here, but we don't want to be around Christmas scraping around for wins. Like, it needs to be done over the entirety of a campaign. I mean, certainly if you look at where Everton were when Moyes came in, they were, I think it was 1 point above the relegation zone and in a real scrap. And since then he's taken 31 points in 19, which is the equivalent to, if we extrapolate it across the course of an entire season, it's 61, 62 points. See how much progress has been made over half a season's worth of football. And you realise the job that's been done here by Moyes. And I think Pickford's been key in that. I've got to write about Everton's player of the season this week, and I'm going to give it to Idrissa Gueye because of his standards across the entirety of the campaign. But if it's Jordan Pickford, nobody could complain, because I think, like, almost like low key now, he has a really excellent campaign, and we all just kind of go, yeah, we're expecting that. That's what we expect to happen. That's what we think is going to happen. I mean, like, we dug out a stat on The Athletic the other day, which was looking at his goals prevented rate, and that's basically like the quality of shots he's facing minus the goals he's conceded, to work out like how effective he's been as a shot stopper. And he's been the league's best shot stopper this season. And I don't feel anybody's really, we're talking about it now, and we mentioned it on The Athletic, but I don't think that's been a theme really this season. But he's been...
I'm not seeing anyone outside of like our Everton sphere but talk about him as like goalkeeper of the year, or like put him in their teams of the year for. And like, I think he's what you just rattled off all those stats there. I think he's kept the second most clean sheets in the league this season as well. And like, I think you're right. I think it does go overlooked, and he's sort of one of those players now that's just like become a permanent presence in the Premier League and at Everton that people just kind of think, it's Pickford at Everton, he's doing all right.
People are bored of him, and I'm not suggesting Everton fans are, or people covering Everton are, because we absolutely aren't. A lot of us think he's great, but I think the discourse nationally, even a week ago, was on Jordan Pickford might be usurped by Dean Henderson. And I'm kind of sat there thinking, Henderson had a great game after he should have been sent off in the FA Cup final, but a bad refereeing decision kind of saved him there. So I think he is taken a bit for granted by the rest of the public. Certainly not here. He's kind of soaking up the adulation from Everton fans after the game. We asked him about his song, and he was saying how much he loves that and how much it means to him that supporters are kind of on board with him to that extent. And I think he said supporters are buzzing off me to this extent. He said it's mega. So I think he's in a really good place. And I think you're seeing that seniority in him now, that senior figure in the dressing room. He realizes that he's an important figure and he can impact others. I think he is starting to do that. So yeah, really, really good season for him again.
Yeah, hope he has a great summer. I don't know if Sunderland are doing a trophy parade or have done one, but I'm sure he'll get down that.
Sure.
Yeah, so he'll get himself down to that.
Yeah.
But yeah, brilliant player, brilliant season from Jordan again. Sort of moving this on then, Paddy. Let's talk. We're going to talk about transfers sort of in two separate bits. Obviously, we'll start off with what Everton did yesterday on Bank Holiday Monday. Mid-afternoon, they put out a statement in which they clarified the future of 5 players, I think I'm right in saying. 4 of them, effectively the loan players, isn't it? So 4 of those players, Jesper Lindstrom, Jack Harrison, Orel Mangala, and who's the one I'm missing? Armando Broja are all going back to their parent club. So obviously the options on Lindstrom and Broja and Mangala. I don't know if I think we did have an option on him, didn't we? But no. Anyway, we didn't. All right, well, not they're all going back anyway to their parent clubs. And then Everton confirmed that they are in talks with Carlos Alcaraz. They didn't say over a permanent deal. They didn't say over extension of a loan. They just said they're in talks with Carlos Alcaraz in regards to his future or something along those lines, which I think was relatively interesting. So I don't think there's any surprise with the 4 lads who are going back, Paddy, necessarily. I think we would have been stunned if the 2 release clauses you mentioned had been activated given the injuries and the up and down form that the Lindstrom and Broja have had. But the Alcaraz stuff I thought was interesting. I mean, I messaged you yesterday when we got this email through saying, what do you take from that? Because I would have thought at this point that they would have been in talks with Flamengo rather than Alcaraz. But I don't know if that statement sort of means that they're sort of just talking personal terms with Alcaraz and his representatives. It was the way I describe it was an encouraging update as somebody who is keen for Everton to sign him. I mean, I've got my Argentina top on today. In support of Carlos getting through the door. And like it was encouraging, positive, but quite ambiguous and a little bit vague from Everton's perspective because it doesn't really tell us much.
No, I mean, I found the wording really interesting and almost a bit bizarre because I think for most people who've had knowledge of Alcaraz's situation and the minutiae of the deal and everything, this has been fairly cut and dried. It's do you activate the purchase option as it is now or don't you? And I think most people think that the fee's more than reasonable, don't they? Given his age and his ability and potential to get better. So, I mean, the Everton phrasing. I mean, what I would say is, if I'm like reading between the lines on this, I think that it's still kind of up in the air. A decision's not being completely made as to which way this is going to go. And he's there and it's an option. But I still go back to the point I made last week about how we're almost resolving the ones we can do as early as possible. I think they need to make a decision on Alcaraz really soon, by the way, because of the terms of the deal.
What are those? Sorry, like does it effectively expire by June? Is it or?
Well, I don't have the specific date, but it expires soon.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, my framing of this has always been around the end of the season, so they've not got long. And I mean, maybe Everton's wording suggests that there's also an option, as you would imagine, to negotiate this down if they wanted. But I think the fee is pretty reasonable. I can't see any reason, and I think what tends to happen with these things is that you'll have to lodge all the paperwork in advance anyway for like in January, end of January, early February, when they signed him on loan, they'd have had to lodge the paperwork, separate paperwork, for the option and obligation to buy. So it's just a case of, effectively, if they want to proceed with the deal as it is, informing the league and informing the player and Flamenco and saying, right, we're going to do this. I mean, I've made my thoughts on what they should do with Alcaraz pretty clear, and I think most people are in the same camp there. So let's see how that one goes. But I mean, updates on the others as well. Lindstrom, I don't think there was ever a chance that they were going to activate that, and that's purely because, I mean, taking his footballing performances to one side, he got a pretty serious injury. I think it was a double hernia, so he's not going to be back anytime soon. Who else have we got? We got Jack Harrison. That there wasn't an option there, and we all know that the reason that he was on a free loan with no transfer fee to Everton over the last 2 years was because a clause in the contract allowed him to do that while Leeds were a championship club. So that mechanism is not available to them anymore. If they want to sign him, they'll have to go and negotiate a fresh deal with Leeds. That looks unlikely based on the social media graphics and the statement put out. And then Armando Broja, nobody's activating his option of 30 million. I think that was probably the most cut and dried of all, heading into this little window. Mangala the same, bad injury, still recovering, and hopefully he does recover, but a long way to go for him. So we're still waiting on. We were still waiting on Dominic Calvert-Lewin, Michael Keane, Idrissa Gueye. That's the most important one for me out of all of the kind of the Everton players that are soon to be out of contract. We're still waiting on those, but what I would suggest is looking at the ones that have been released so far, that these are ones that are still up in the air. There's still discussions to be had with some of these players. Let's hope they, certainly with Idrissa Gueye, they can get a deal over the line, because even at 35, nearly 36, is still really important.
It's the time of year, isn't it, when people micro-analyse everything to the point where, obviously, we've spoken about the wording of Everton's statement there. Yes. on Alcaraz, but even yesterday, it was Everton put a graphic out, didn't they, about Idrissa Gueye's form in the season. It said nobody did it better than Idrissa, and everyone was like, "Did that's past tense? Does that mean he's going?" Everyone was panicking, worrying about his situation. But Moyes, I thought, was kind of interesting afterwards, because after the Newcastle game, this is on Alcaraz, because Joe Thomas, didn't he, asked him about his future and what he thought. And a couple of days on from being the most honest fella ever when talking about Everton being in talks and wanting Delap, he sort of flipped it in his press conference and said, "Well, you're just going to have to wait and see." It's like, as if to say, I'm not going to give anything away on this. And I thought it was quite an interesting little change of tack, that a player who is at the club, who Everton do have an option on, he wouldn't give anything away. But a player who is maybe a bit, maybe not pie in the sky target, but is in talks of a lot of different clubs, is not ours. He was really open and honest about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's usually the other way around, and I would suggest it's usually the other way around even with Moyes. He's one of those quite old school managers who normally says, "This player's not ours, so I don't want to discuss him." So the fact that he went on the record about Delap is notable, and I suppose there are two theories there. One is that this is a pretty open pursuit, and this is how much we like you, and we want to signpost that to you, your advisors, everybody else. And there is some confidence. The other is that it's signposting to Everton fans that this is the calibre of player we're after, and we want to give you some hope. And maybe we're not going to be able to get him, but we want players like Liam Delap, and you should be excited about what's going to come. So, I mean, let's see which one of those it actually is. As we know, there's going to be a lot of competition to sign Liam Delap, but I also found the press conference intriguing, and I wasn't there myself, not when it was live, because we had Pickford. We were doing Pickford. Pickford finished. We weren't able to get back to the media room in a different part of St James's in time to speak to Moyes. So I was kind of catching up with it as you guys would. As even as a normal fan would. I mean, he's definitely shut me down on Alcaraz before, and he's always kind of tempered expectations with him a little bit. I mean, said he was good, didn't he, on Sunday? But there's never been that kind of effusive praise, I would suggest. Like he wasn't really a Moyes signing. He was a recruitment pick, as we've discussed before. And I think sometimes with somebody like Moyes, it then maybe takes these players a little bit longer, if at all, to win him over. He was positive about Sunday's performance, but would not be drawn at all on Alcaraz's future, which is interesting, given what else he's doing.
Just to sort of flip this then, from your point of view, why would they not sign him now? Because like it feels to me like I genuinely, if there's any reason for them thinking like, right, we're not sure about this lad, what do you think that'd be? Because I even look at
footballing ability.
Just anything, like, because it seems to me, and like, feel free to tell me if I'm wrong. Because obviously you've seen him, and I think crucially you've seen him in the away games where he's probably been at his best for Everton and played really well. But it seems like his attitude's fine. He's really popular, and I feel like what Moyes would have really liked about Sunday, and you know, I took this from Joe Thomas's piece afterwards, and he was back in his box defending and scrapping and blocking shots straight after he'd scored. Those moments in the first half, he was getting back and doing that sort of stuff. At Fulham, he was involved in all 3 goals. Yeah. Obviously, there's an assist for the third one, but it's the closing down to get Everton a throw in for the first one. It's winning the corner for the second. Like, it feels like, again, he's not perfect. He's not amazing. It's not going to be a player that would necessarily transform Everton from being, mid-table side into European challenges by any means. But like, I'm just trying to think, like, if they don't do this, what do you think the reason would be for it?
Yeah, well, my argument with this has always been that for what it is now, I think about 12.5 million, if you convert it, he's worth it, even if he just becomes a very reliable squad player who makes contributions and is a threat away from home, and certainly on the counter gives the team something different. So I struggle to understand the logic, but I think going back to the previous answer, what I've said there about how actually it wasn't really a Moyes pick in January. It was recruitment team who had tracked the player for quite a while. I don't think there's an issue over the fee. I think everybody pretty much accepts that this is a decent fee for a player, very good fee even for a player of his age and his potential and his experience. So it will purely come down to a footballing decision. It's, do Everton feel, does David Moyes in particular feel that he wants this player in his squad? Does he feel that there's better out there in the market? And they may take a view that actually we're not interested in the fee. What we're looking at here is which players will most improve our squad and which players are most suited to the Everton squad. But I have to say, like, obviously they've offered Decore and Decore's chosen not to take that deal. I mean, we know far more lucrative terms on the table from elsewhere, including the Middle East. But they've offered Decore, so that's something of a blow because he was part of their original thinking for next season. The Idrissa Gueye situation is still not resolved. And you've got Charlie Alcaraz, who was there, and quite easy to do, and they may still do that. But let's say, for argument's sake, and this is very hypothetical, but Decore goes, and at least one of Gueye and Alcaraz doesn't hang around. You're just looking at how many players you've got to. There's no Young, who I thought was good, by the way, really good in this final game. And there's some funny moments with Anthony Gordon there. Loads of funny moments, actually, with Anthony Gordon. But you've lost him. And then you've lost your backup goalkeepers as well. And you're leaving yourselves an awful lot to do with a recruitment team, a recruitment structure that's still not fully in place yet. So, I mean, I think they are progressing on these things, but it's going to be a big window. There's an awful lot to do. So I just think, like, my logic on this is some of these are just really obvious. Just go and do Idrissa Gueye. I'd have done Idrissa Gueye before now. Just said, there's one done for peace of mind. He's going to be there next season. Alcaraz, easy one to do. Get him done right at the end of the season. And then you can prioritise the other positions where you think Everton really, really need to strengthen for next season. Because there's loads of other areas as well.
Yeah. Let's move on to about that then, because we sort of hinted at it there, but Moyes was very open about Everton being interested and in talks with Liam Delap, albeit I think he's in talks and there's a lot of clubs interested in him, as we
Yes.
mentioned.
Yeah.
And last week as well, I went down to with Joe Thomas off and Chris Beasley off last week. I fulfilled the Sander Westerveld emergency loan role as the Everton reporter last week. I went down to speak to Beto at Finch Farm, which was great. I've not done anything like that for ages, so I really enjoyed it. I spoke to him before. Moyes was so open and honest about Delap in his press conference, which was quite frustrating because obviously it would have been good to ask him about that. But where do you think we're at with the striker situation at the moment? Because it sort of feels like, obviously we've got a situation where Broyer's gone back. Calvert-Lewin came on and missed 2 absolute shits at the weekend, and we'll have to see about him. But just on these 2 in particular, like I find it interesting that Moyes is being so open about the lap, but I don't really know why he's doing it. Like I'm trying to work out if it's look, we're in the market with these big players. We really want to improve this position this summer, or if it's maybe a little bit of quiet confidence there with it. I've gone back and forth on which one it is, but I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be competitive, but Everton have made their pitch to him now. As we all know, Moyes has been pretty open and candid on that, more so than certainly I was expecting. But I don't think the lap rumour is anything new. Certainly, a number of us reported it last month in April. So that link has kind of been confirmed. Everton have progressed with the deal, and quite an easy one in the sense that, or at least in terms of knowing what you need to do to get it done, you've got a 30 million clause you have to activate. So unique situation where Ipswich know, even now that he's going to go, that loads of clubs are going to activate it, and then it just becomes up to the player to kind of travel around and speak to clubs. So that's what he's been doing. I think, and it's something we've spoken about before, but I think Moyes has looked at his striking options and thought he could kind of do better. And this is a theme we've mentioned before, how Everton had, I think, 4 strikers on the books this season, and yet maybe none of them were really in Moyes' head, kind of your bona fide number 9 moving forward. I think they've been surprised by how well Beto has done. And there's a real warmth now when Moyes speaks about Beto, and some of the other coaching staff, in fairness, when they speak about Beto in terms of like how he's progressing and what he's done and everything else. I think he's taken them by surprise. But that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be your main man for the next 2-3 seasons. And various other problems with Calvert-Lewin's situation still to be resolved. So, I mean, said quite a while ago that I think a number 9 is going to be high up on Moyes' list, and it is. Let's see where we go with that. But the situation's really fluid, isn't it? Because you kind of need a resolution on Calvert-Lewin. If Calvert-Lewin stays and you buy a new number 9, then there's not really a place. You don't really need Beto. And would Beto even want to be there as a kind of second or third choice option? I don't know. He's kind of proved himself to me this year. I think he's proved himself and probably would get a pretty decent move off the back of how well he's done in the Premier League. So the sooner those guarantees come, the better. The sooner those resolutions come, the better. I would have no problem whatsoever with Beto, even if they signed the lap, with Beto being around next season, provided he wants to be, because I think he's done a really good job. And you know what? On Sunday, I kind of feared for Everton a little bit because he's playing against the back 3. You've got some big lads in there who should be able to sort of go toe-to-toe with him physically. Botman, Dan Burn, Shah. And I think he gave them all a bit of a bloody nose, like particularly Botman. Like there were times where Botman just couldn't deal with him. And some of his hold-up play was much better as well, kind of bringing the ball down on his chest and laying it off quickly. I think like the worst moments for Beto are like either when he has a really bad first touch or when he takes a touch and he starts looking around and you can almost see the kind of the cogs turning like very, very slowly in his head. By the time he makes a decision, the ball's being whipped off his toes and the opposition, as you saw at Chelsea, have scored. So that was much cleaner for me in the main on Sunday. So loads up in the air in the striking department. I mean, like they are in for the lap, but we know others are too.
Yeah, like he has surprised me better. Like, and I think that Like, and the other thing I'd say as well, like, there's nothing more humbling than sitting in front of someone who you've maybe said isn't very good on podcasts or online and talking to them and hearing, like, honestly, like, and like them, like, talking about their journey and how hard they're working and all that sort of stuff. Like, it does sort of make you think, oh God, am I horrible? Am I terrible?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I am, yeah, obviously, but like, I thought that, like, of all the things, like, I spoke to him about, I thought the thing that was most interesting when he said that, like, I think last summer he did an interview, didn't he, where he said he was using social media hate to kind of inspire him. And I think at the time everyone was like, "It's right, you know, that's really good." But he's obviously, since then, he said to me in the week that he's changed that now, and he's you know, Coleman effectively told him, like, that if you play angry all the time, that's going to get you nowhere. And he's kind of been able to find some inner peace in his game by working with a sports psychologist, and like that is a much more healthy position to be in, I think, isn't it, for him? Just in terms of his game and his outlook on football. That, you know, going on social media and reading all these horrible things, but, you know, it might give you like a little sort of sugar rush of a boost, but doing that as fuel for motivation is not good.
Sustainable.
Yeah, and I think from his point of view, you know, doing that, getting himself in a stronger place mentally, and obviously the technical aspects as well that Moyes and his staff have clearly worked with him on. I'm still not perfect by any means, but I think you're right. You know, that performance of the weekend. You know, I think it's rare we come away from a game when Better starts at the front and we've said he had a really good game but didn't score, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, usually it's his goals and the rest of it fills in, isn't it, when we're talking about Better? But Sunday was one of those where he led the line properly, and he contributed in other ways other than sticking the ball in the back of the net.
I know Moyes, from his actions, seems to feel that a number 9 is really important. I actually don't think it's the biggest priority in this squad. Like, I still think like a really good kind of aggressive and potent right winger, for example, would make a huge difference. I think a number 10, if it's not going to be Alcaraz, or if Alcaraz is there as well, a number 10 who can give them something different and help knit the play would be really key. Even look at kind of a new right back, for example. To me, all of these things are probably, given what else is in the squad, just as important, maybe even more so than the striking situation. I think, like, you could get by with Beto and others around it. But I don't think that's Moyes' view necessarily, at least not with regards to kind of the number 9, the starting jersey. So Beto's done well.
Yeah, from number 9, Paddy, to number 43.
Great.
We have got Billy Crellin, who had it last year. I think he's on loan this season, but his contract's up in the summer. Is that right?
Yes, yeah. So Accrington Stanley, and did pretty well.
Yeah,
by all accounts. But I mean, he's been a backup goalkeeper and has had loads of loans. So I mean, he's not going to be a long-term Everton goalkeeper. I think there's an option there to extend, but I don't think that's necessarily going to happen. So not much else to say about him beyond that, really.
Some other interesting ones, though. I mean, we've done Conor McElhenney, but either side of him, John Joe Kenny had this shirt for 4 seasons, between 2014-15 to 2018-19. And before McElhenney, Shkodran Mustafi had it for a year as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think some people forget, don't they, that Mustafi was part of Everton's youth setup for a while without ever making the grade, and obviously went on to have a really good career for himself, playing for Arsenal and playing for Germany and doing so well for them. John Joe Kenny was an interesting one. I remember the first football that came back during COVID was Bundesliga, and at that point he was on loan at Schalke. So we're thinking, like, how do we keep people interested here? Like, got Everton, got this lad out on loan at Schalke, and I was like, you know what, I'm really looking forward to watching Bundesliga games and seeing John Joe Kenny. And actually, for that season at Schalke, he scored a few really good goals, and he was quite highly regarded. There was a bit of talk at the time over Schalke coming in, and I think they would have done if they'd had the money, but coming in with kind of a decent, kind of sizable bid for him, given how well he'd done in the Bundesliga for them. So like, it's quite funny looking back on that now, seeing the career trajectory today. I mean, he's playing for Hertha Berlin. It's still a decent level, but it's not the level that I think anybody maybe thought. I mean, he was a regular in the England age groups. He was one of that sizable Everton cohort of young players who won the under-20 World Cup. Calvert-Lewin, obviously one of the others. And I think everybody kind of thought, well, he's gonna kick on. But I think the problem for Kenny is that, like, quite small, and I don't think anybody was really ever sure where he was going to play. Like, he's kind of like, in the way he plays, he's a centre back, but he's not got the physical attributes to be a top quality centre back. Everton tried him even in reserve games. They tried him as an under-20 in the under-21s or under-23s as like a defensive midfielder. Probably didn't have the quality on the ball to do that. And he played right back and maybe just lacks a little bit in terms of kind of pace and size and kind of dynamism. So again, really good career, but not enough to make it at the top level. So yeah, I mean, it just makes me laugh going back to those Bundesliga games and getting excited to actually watch John Joe Kenny playing for Schalke. It kind of shows where we all were at that point.
That was such a weird time, wasn't it? Like, I remember, like, there's loads of stories about, like, which Bundesliga team should you support? And, like,
yes,
I think Haaland scored, didn't he, in the game? And, like, I remember, like, there's that weird picture where they couldn't go and celebrate with each other because there was social distances, so they were all sort of stood quite far apart. And yeah, absolutely bizarre little time in our lives. But yeah, I was convinced John Joe Kenny was going to make it, like, just because I think he had the right attitude and mentality and work ethic. But, you know, listen, like I said, he's played for some huge clubs, played for Schalke, played for Celtic, playing for Hertha Berlin now as well. So he's forged a decent career for himself. But I did think he would be a mainstay in that Everton side. Let's wrap it up there anyway, Paddy. We'll be back next week. God, I wonder what situation we'll be in next week. Surely we'll have updates on Carlos Alcaraz, Idrissa Gueye, Calvert-Lewin. Plenty to talk about on Byline 44. Just a reminder, we are sponsored by the Bridewell. If you're watching us on YouTube, do hit subscribe. Do leave us a comment on anything we discussed today. And if you're listening to us on iTunes or in particular Spotify, do hit a 5-star review for us. Let's try and get that rating up towards the number 5 mark. And yeah, if you want to email us about anything we discussed today, it's evertonbyline@gmail.com. We'll be back next week. I hope everyone has a great week and relaxes up the toppies. We'll speak to you